In my past life, I built an empire from scratch, late nights, shattered heels, and 1,000 ignored calls. I was Sienna Vale, tech industry prodigy and CEO of Virion, a company I molded with my blood and breath. And I trusted Damian West. He was my COO, my partner, my lover. The man who whispered promises in my bed while plotting my destruction behind closed doors. He leaked our IP to competitors, sabotaged our launch, and when the board turned against me, he was the one who cast the deciding vote. I still remember his face when he watched me fall. Calm. Cold. Beautiful. When the scandal broke, the headlines turned me into a villain. My inbox filled with threats. Investors pulled out. Virion collapsed. Damian walked away with a golden parachute and a glowing feature in Forbes. I died 3 months later, overdosed on pills and silence. But the universe must have owed me something. Because I opened my eyes again, 15 years younger, lying in a shabby studio apartment I hadn't seen since college. Same body. Same memories. Different fate. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Not this time." I legally changed my name to Aria Lane. I erased Sienna Vale from the world. I spent the next 7 years climbing, investing, building. Quietly. Strategically. I created a shell company under another shell company and used them to acquire shares in startups I knew would boom. And when I had enough capital, I launched my own investment firm, Vanta Black Capital. No one knew it was me. They only knew my alias, the elusive investor from nowhere who turned founders into legends and crushed those who got in her way. Damian West had risen too. He now ran his own company, Kerntech. He thought he'd won. That I was dead. That no one remembered what he did. But I was alive. I remembered everything. And this time I didn't come to rebuild. I came to ruin him. My opportunity came wrapped in a navy envelope. A formal invitation to the annual Apex Summit, an elite gathering of top-tier CEOs, angel investors, and founders. Damian would be there. So would the people who helped bury me. It was the same event where I first pitched Virion, where he stood beside me and smiled for the cameras while sticking a knife in my back. 7 years of silence had passed, but I still remembered the taste of that betrayal like it was yesterday. I walked into that ballroom in black silk and red lipstick, armed with a new face, a new name, and a pitch book that would make his empire bleed. They didn't recognize me, not yet. Not even Damian, who walked past me with a drink in his hand and a woman on his arm. My hands didn't shake. My smile didn't falter. Because I didn't come here to flinch. I came to break him. And that's when I met him. Cole Maddox. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and a reputation for making billionaires out of nobodies, or burning companies to the ground if they crossed him. He watched me across the room with cool gray eyes and a half-smile that didn't quite reach his mouth. He saw me, really saw me. I don't know how I knew it, but I felt it in my spine. When he finally walked over, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "You don't belong here," he said. "You're not like them." I raised a brow. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "It's not," he replied. "It's exactly why I'm interested." And just like that, a new game began. Cole didn't know who I used to be. But he knew power when he saw it. And I saw something else in him, fury. Precision. Pain. The kind of man who'd been burned before and wanted revenge just as badly as I did. Maybe he didn't know my real name yet, but he would. Soon. And when he found out, he'd either walk away or help me destroy Damian West piece by piece. I didn't know which outcome I wanted more. All I knew was this time, I wasn't the girl who got played. I was the one holding the match. And I'd already drenched everything he loved in gasoline. I didn't expect Cole Maddox to call the next day. I'd barely slipped out of the Apex Summit without making a scene, still buzzing from the adrenaline of being in the same room as Damian without clawing his eyes out, when my phone lit up with an unknown number and a message that read, "Lunch. 1 p.m. Bring the heels, not the pitch." Attached was an address, Maddox Tower, 32nd floor. I stared at the screen for a full minute, wondering if I should ignore it. I wasn't here to be anyone's protege or pawn. But something about the way he saw through me, like he could peel back every layer of reinvention I'd carefully constructed, made me curious. Dangerous, yes. But I didn't get reborn to play it safe. I showed up wearing black stilettos and a blazer that could cut glass. The receptionist didn't even blink. She just escorted me to a private rooftop restaurant where Cole sat like he owned the sky. "You came," he said, not looking up from his espresso. "Curiosity kills faster than poison," I replied, sliding into the chair across from him. "So do allies who waste time." That made him smile. Not a warm smile. A calculating one. I did some digging. Aria Lane doesn't exist before 7 years ago. No records. No paper trail. No past. My heart skipped. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Not at all," he said, leaning back. "I'm offering you a deal. I don't care who you used to be. I care about what you want now. And I think we want the same thing." "You don't even know what I want," I said, voice steady. "You want to bury someone. Someone high enough to make it count. You were at the summit to rattle the cage, not raise capital. And you watched Damian West like you wanted to slit his throat with your stiletto." I went cold. "You know him?" "Let's just say he and I have unfinished business. He burned one of my firms 3 years ago. Manipulated a vote, tanked a deal, and got away clean. Until now." My silence must have been all the answer he needed. Cole leaned forward, eyes dark and focused. "You want him ruined." "I want him bled dry. I can fund it. Backdoor you into the industry's tightest rooms. Kill every round of funding he touches. You just have to say the word." I stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or run. "Why me?" "Because I know a revenge face when I see one. And you wear it better than anyone I've ever met." That night, I walked back to my apartment with Cole's card burning a hole in my coat pocket. I poured myself a drink and stood in front of the mirror, staring at the woman I'd become. Aria Lane was supposed to be invisible. Untouchable. But Cole had touched something. He'd seen a version of me that I thought I'd buried with Sienna Vale. Not the CEO. Not the betrayed lover. But the woman who wanted to burn the world down and smile while it screamed. I hadn't said yes to him yet. But I hadn't said no either. The next morning, the first headline I saw was about Damian's new product launch. Kerntech was unveiling something revolutionary, something Sienna once sketched in her journals. He hadn't just stolen my company. He was still stealing my work. That was all the answer I needed. I dialed the number on Cole's card. He picked up after one ring. "Tell me what you need," I said. "Everything," he replied. "And then we take it all from him." Cole didn't waste time. Within 24 hours, I was standing inside a sleek penthouse suite converted into a war room, with monitors tracking Kerntech stock trends, leaked beta test data, internal employee movements, and a private dossier labeled Operation Marrow. It was clear he'd been planning this long before I walked into his view, he just hadn't had the weapon to finish it. That weapon was me. I knew Damian's pressure points. His passwords, his patterns, the kind of women he hired, the kind of lies he told to seal deals. Kerntech had grown since my death, but so had I. I stood in front of the digital board with my arms crossed, scanning every line of data. "His CTO," I said, tapping the screen, "Logan Wu. He's clean, loyal, and brilliant. But he has a younger sister with medical debt. If we buy out her hospital's billing system, we can leverage her account. Logan's loyalty will crack." Cole raised an eyebrow, amused and impressed. "Cold. You said you wanted everything," I replied. "This is what everything looks like." That week, we started the takedown. Quietly. Kerntecha's suppliers got delays they couldn't explain. Private investors ghosted Damien mid-negotiation. A press leak hinted at patent infringement, enough to get the SEC sniffing. And I stayed invisible. Aria Lane, shadow investor. No one saw me coming. Until I made sure they did. At a networking gala hosted by Nova Capital, Damien was scheduled to present as the guest of honor. Cole pulled strings to get me on the panel. I walked in late, dressed in emerald green silk and silence, and I watched Damien's face go pale the moment he saw me. I didn't wear a mask or change my hair. I wanted him to wonder. I wanted him to feel it. He didn't recognize Arya, but his eyes never left me. I took the seat beside him, leaned in with a smile, and said, "Big night, Mr. West." He blinked, thrown off. "Have we met?" I looked him in the eyes, my voice honey and venom. "Not in this life." Cole watched us from across the room, his gaze unreadable. After the panel, he pulled me aside into a quiet corridor, his voice low. "That was a move. He needs to see the storm before it hits." "You like watching him squirm?" I met his eyes. "I like reminding him I'm not buried." Cole looked at me for a long moment. "You know, you're not what I expected." "And what did you expect?" "A woman who needed help getting revenge." "I don't need help," I said. "I need access. You give me the doors. I'll kick them down." That night, he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was fire meeting fire, power testing power. His hands in my hair, my mouth crashing into his like we were both made of hunger and defiance. When we pulled apart, breathless and wired, he said, "This doesn't change the mission." "No," I whispered, "it fuels it." And I meant it. I didn't come here for love. I didn't come here to feel. But with Cole, it wasn't love, it was war. And Damien West had no idea how close the fire was. The first time Damien tried to reach out to me, it was through one of his assistants. She cornered me at a rooftop mixer for VCs and founders, clutching a champagne glass and pretending she wasn't delivering a message. "Mr. West was wondering if you'd be open to a private sit-down," she said sweetly. "He was very impressed by your panel appearance last week." I took a sip of my drink, letting her see the flash of amusement in my eyes. "Tell Mr. West I don't do sit-downs with strangers. And next time he's impressed, he can applaud like everyone else." She left, flustered, and I turned just in time to see Damien across the terrace, watching me from behind a group of laughing tech brothers. He didn't move. Just stood there with his glass, staring like a man trying to remember a dream he swore he'd forgotten. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I let him feel the distance, the curiosity, the chill of something familiar he couldn't name. Because that was the game now. I was the ghost in his machine. The shadow behind every failed pitch, every closed door, every investor who suddenly pulled out. With Cole funding my moves and our strategy unfolding like a chess match, Kerntech was starting to slip. Small cracks at first, a failed contract with a supplier, a mysterious resignation, a shareholder lawsuit filed quietly under sealed documents. But it was enough. And Damien felt it. He began scrambling, reaching for press, launching half-baked innovations to distract from falling stock, making moves I used to make when I was desperate. I knew every play before he made it. That's what happens when you create a man and he turns around to kill you with your own tools. Meanwhile, Cole and I moved in tighter sync. We met at 3 a.m. in silent boardrooms, sprawled across couches with coffee-stained notes between us. We slept little, ate less, and burned hotter with each day. Sometimes I forgot we were enemies once, two people chasing blood on different maps. Now, we were magnets, locked in orbit around the same goal. One night, he looked at me across the glow of his penthouse skyline and said, "You know, I didn't believe in second lives until I met you." I smiled. "I didn't believe in allies until I met you." He crossed the room and pulled me close, his voice barely a breath. What if I want more than war? I looked up at him, heart pounding. Then you'd better survive the battle. We kissed again, harder this time. It wasn't about comfort. It was hunger, memory, rage. Every touch was a reclaiming. Every gasp was proof I was still alive. But deep down, something ached. Because I knew the deeper we went, the more dangerous it became. Not because I didn't want him. But because falling for someone while you're still sharpening knives never ends well. Especially when your ex-lover doesn't know he's about to lose everything. And your new one is just as ruthless as you are. The collapse started quietly, just a whisper at first. A leaked memo from Kerntecha's internal compliance officer flagged undisclosed conflicts of interest. I didn't have to lift a finger for that one. Cole had an ex-employee planted 6 months ago, and the seed we'd watered finally bloomed. Investors panicked. Stocks dipped. And Damien? Damien began to sweat. He put on a show for the cameras. Smiling at press conferences, overcompensating on social media, launching flashy partnerships with empty legs, but I saw the desperation beneath it. He reached out again, this time personally. An email. Subject line, I think we should talk. The body was brief. Polished. Dangerous. You're not who you say you are. But I think you're someone I used to know. Either way, you're playing a dangerous game. Call me. Or we both lose. I stared at the screen, heart steady. He was starting to remember. Not all at once, but enough. Something in my eyes, my voice, the way I challenged him during that panel, it was clicking. And good. Let it click. Let it haunt him. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Cole with a note, he's starting to sniff. Accelerate the burn. Within 48 hours, we had our opening. Kerntecha's biggest pending merger, an AI subsidiary worth half its projected growth, was about to go public with its decision. Cole and I made sure that decision changed. We used everything. Soft blackmail. Strategic leaks. Anonymous tips to regulators. When the press release dropped, stating the merger had been rejected due to ethical concerns, Kerntecha's value plummeted. Damien went into damage control. And I went to watch it unfold. I showed up at a private tech event he couldn't afford to miss. This time, I didn't wear green silk. I wore a white suit. Clean. Blinding. Unforgettable. He saw me within minutes. Trapped in conversation with 2 foreign investors, he kept glancing over, like I was gravity. When we finally locked eyes, I walked straight to him. You look like you've seen a ghost, I said. His voice was a rasp. You look like someone I buried. I tilted my head. Maybe you should have dug deeper. Who are you? He demanded. You know who I am, I said, just loud enough for the investors to hear. You just can't admit it. And then I walked away. I didn't need to stay. I'd already won the moment he asked that question. That night, Cole met me in the elevator of Maddox Tower. We didn't speak. Not until we were behind closed doors, with the skyline stretched out beneath us. He knows, Cole said. Let him, I whispered. It doesn't matter anymore. He can remember every detail. He still won't be able to stop what's coming. Cole stepped closer, brushing my hair behind my ear, fingers trailing down to my throat. And when it's over? Then we burn the last piece, I said. And walk out clean. He leaned in, his lips against my skin. You're playing with fire. So are you. And when he kissed me, it wasn't about war or revenge or strategy anymore. It was about claiming what had been stolen. Not just from me, but from both of us. Love built from ruin. Hunger born of betrayal. And vengeance wrapped in silk. I woke up in Cole's bed with sunlight on my bare skin and the city stretching out behind glass walls like a kingdom I was about to conquer. He was already up, shirtless and focused, scanning headlines on his tablet like a general surveying a battlefield. "You're in the news," he said without looking up. "Apparently you snubbed Damian West in public. Investors are speculating if you're planning a hostile takeover." I stretched lazily and replied, "Let them speculate. Fear is half the strategy." He finally looked at me, that wolfish half-smile tugging at his lips. "You don't want credit. You want him cornered." "I want him disarmed," I said, sitting up. "I want him to reach for every lifeline and find they're all gone." Over the next 2 weeks, that's exactly what we did. We took his lifelines, one by one. Cole's analysts uncovered an inflated revenue report from Damian's last quarter. I sent it, anonymously, to a journalist I once mentored in my past life. Her exposé ran with the headline, "The Illusion of Kerntech, Is Damian West's Empire Just Smoke and Valuation?" The fallout was swift. Stockholders screamed. The board grew restless. Employees began to leak internal messages anonymously, revealing toxic culture and executive-level misconduct. Everything Damian had built started to rot in the daylight. But the moment I knew we had him wasn't when the stock dipped. It was when he showed up in person. Maddox Tower. Security tried to stop him, but Cole waved him through. I stood in the corner of the conference room, watching as Damian stormed in like a man fighting ghosts. "You," he snapped at Cole, "are trying to destroy me." "I don't need to try," Cole said calmly. "You're doing a fine job yourself." Damian's eyes locked onto mine. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. His voice dropped. "It's you, isn't it? You're her." I didn't flinch. "Say it." His jaw clenched. "Sienna Vale." I smiled slowly. "Took you long enough." He looked stunned. "Wrecked. Haunted. But you're dead?" I stepped closer. "You made sure of that. Or thought you did. But the thing about burning someone like me? I come back hotter." "This is insane," he said, shaking his head. "You came back just to, what, ruin me?" "No," I said softly. "I came back to show you what real power looks like." He turned to Cole. "And you're helping her?" "She's unstable. She's dangerous." "She's brilliant," Cole replied, voice cold. "And she's mine now." Something in Damian's eyes broke then. The realization that not only had I survived, but I'd thrived. And worse, I'd fallen into the arms of someone who could finish what he started. "This isn't over," he growled. "It is for you," I said. "You just don't know it yet." After he left, Cole poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed me one. "So. He knows." "Let him," I said, taking a slow sip. "He'll be so busy reacting, he won't see the last blow coming." "And what's that?" Cole asked. I turned to face the city. "We take his company. We turn it into mine. And we rename it after the woman he tried to erase." "Sienna Vale," Cole said, testing the name. "I like it." "So do I whispered. "It's time she was reborn in more than just memory." The acquisition began as whispers, strategic purchases through shell corporations, anonymous investor groups buying up Kerntech shares during its lowest dip. While Damian scrambled to plug leaks and stabilize what was left of his public image, I was already inside. Every board member who once doubted me in my past life was now being courted with polished decks, future-facing projections, and discreet promises whispered into 5-star lunches. They didn't know who I was, not really. They just knew Aria Lane was young, brilliant, and backed by Maddox wealth. And that was enough to turn heads. Cole handled the numbers. I handled the minds. We moved like ghosts, 2 steps ahead of Damian at every turn. He tried to launch a desperate comeback, a flashy press campaign, a sudden product drop, even a thinly veiled threat through a regulatory board Cole had long since outmaneuvered. None of it mattered. Because by the time the board called for a vote of confidence, I already had control. When the final meeting was scheduled, I didn't send a lawyer or a proxy. I walked into the Kerntech boardroom myself, in the same heels I wore the day they voted me out of Virion. And I watched every old man at the table go pale as they realized who I really was. Damien was already seated, the only one still clinging to arrogance. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, voice flat. "Neither were you," I replied. "But here we are." The vote took less than 10 minutes. 6-3. Effective immediately, Damien West was to be removed as CEO and replaced by an interim executive, me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood, nodded, and said, "Meeting adjourned." Afterward, Damien caught up to me in the hallway, his face hollow. "Why?" he asked. "You had your life. You had your success. Why come back for me?" I turned slowly, looked him in the eye, and said, "Because I gave you everything. My company. My trust. My heart. And you turned it into a weapon. You didn't just steal my legacy, you tried to rewrite my story without me in it. So I came back to make sure you'd never forget whose story it really was." "Was any of it real?" he asked, quieter now. "What we had?" I paused. For a second, the past flickered behind my eyes, the late-night brainstorming sessions, the stolen kisses in the office, the hope. "Yes," I said. "That's why it hurt." He looked down, then back up at me. "And him? Maddox?" "He didn't save me," I said. "He saw me when I was already standing. That's the difference." That night, I signed the final acquisition papers in Cole's office. He poured the champagne and handed me the pen like it was a crown. "Well?" he asked. "How does it feel?" I stared at the documents, at the name Kerntech being absorbed under a new label, Vale Industries. "My name. My legacy. It feels like resurrection," I said. He leaned in, brushing my hair back, his mouth warm against my ear. "You know, I didn't think I could love someone like you. Too sharp. Too dangerous." I turned, kissing him slowly. "You didn't fall for someone safe, Cole. You fell for someone who never dies easy." And as the city lights blinked beneath us and the ink dried on the page that turned revenge into rebirth, I knew I had done more than destroy Damien West. I had erased the version of myself that ever needed his approval to begin with. I thought taking the company would be the climax. That once I signed the final paper and watched Damien escorted out of his own boardroom, the hunger would fade and satisfaction would settle in. But revenge doesn't end with the crown, it lingers. It tastes like power, like validation, like the thrill of being feared by the very men who once mocked me. Vale Industries launched under my real name with a quiet, calculated PR campaign. No interviews. No red carpets. Just results. I brought in female-led startups, underfunded innovators, and buried every whisper that once called me unstable. The tech world started whispering a new name, Sienna Vale, resurrected. But while I rebuilt in the light, Damien began unraveling in the shadows. He tried to start something new, some rushed blockchain venture with no legs, but the industry wasn't buying it anymore. He had no allies. No capital. And worst of all, no credibility. Cole kept me informed but never gloated. He just watched me, always one step behind but never in my way. Our nights together grew quieter, less frantic. He didn't need to seduce me anymore, we were past the games. He knew the shape of my rage and loved me not in spite of it, but because of it. One night, while we were watching the city from his balcony, he said, "It's done. You won." But I shook my head. "Not yet." "You want him dead?" he asked. "I want him to remember. Every single day. That he was nothing without me. And now I'm everything without him." Cole nodded slowly. "Then give him the one thing he can't bury, the truth." The next morning, I sent Damien a package. Inside was a leather-bound copy of the original Virion pitch deck, our pitch deck, with my name printed on every page and a letter tucked inside that read, "I built it. You broke it. I rebuilt it without you." He never replied. But a week later, I saw him at a conference. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just turned and left the room like a man haunted by a ghost he couldn't explain. That was the closure. Not an apology. Not revenge. Just the silence of a man who knew he lost to someone who should have stayed buried. Back at the office, Cole walked in on me late, standing at the window alone. "You're still chasing something," he said. "No," I whispered. "I'm just realizing something." "What's that?" "That I never wanted him destroyed. I wanted to know I could survive him. And now I know I did." He stepped behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed the side of my neck. "Then it's time to stop surviving and start living." I turned in his arms, smiled up at the only man who never tried to dim my fire, and said, "Then let's start tonight." Because revenge was never the ending. It was the beginning. And this time I wasn't rising from the ashes. I was lighting the match and building an empire in my name, flawless, fearless, and finally free. 6 months passed, and with each one, I became more of a myth than a woman. Sienna Vale, the name they once tried to bury, now graced magazine covers, tech panels, and private investor summits where whispers turned to awe. But I kept my world small. My circle tight. Cole and I worked like mirrors, equal, sharp, unyielding. By day, we tore through deals with synchronized precision. By night, we burned slow in candlelit rooms, in penthouse shadows, in sheets that remembered every bruise and bruiseback kiss. We never said the word love. We didn't need to. It pulsed in the silence between our glances. In the way he touched me like I was both a storm and a sanctuary. But just when I thought the world had finally settled under my heel, a letter arrived. No stamp. No sender. Just my name, Sienna, not Aria, scrawled across the envelope in a hand I hadn't seen in years. Inside was a single sentence: "You think the past is buried, but some ghosts crawl." Taped beneath it was a photo. Not of me. Of Cole. Younger. Bloodied. Standing beside a man I didn't recognize in front of a building that looked burned. I stared at it for a long time, my breath caught in my throat. When I showed it to Cole, he didn't even flinch. "It was before everything," he said. "Before you." What happened? I tried to burn my father's name out of my story. I failed. He sat beside me, his voice lower now. That building was the last thing my family owned. A warehouse full of stolen tech. I exposed him. He nearly had me killed for it. I traced the edges of the photo. "And the man next to you?" "My older brother. He chose blood over truth. And he's the one sending you that message." I was silent. "Then, why now?" "Because I chose you. And he hates what that means." "That you're not your father's son? That I'm not his weapon anymore." I looked at him. "Do you still have secrets?" "Only the ones I've already buried." He stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the skyline he'd once vowed to conquer. "If he comes for us, I'll handle it." "We'll handle it," I corrected. "Together." Cole turned, eyes meeting mine. "Are you sure? After everything we've done, are you ready for more war?" "I didn't build this empire for peace," I said, stepping into his arms. "I built it so no one could ever touch me again." "Then you should know," he whispered, "there's nothing in this world I wouldn't burn for you." That night, I slept with the letter folded beneath my pillow. Not because I feared the ghost. But because I wanted to be ready when he knocked. Because this time it wasn't just about revenge. It was about protection. Legacy. And love born in fire. The knock came 2 weeks later, 3 a.m., sharp, deliberate, not desperate. Cole was already awake, dressed, gun holstered beneath his tailored coat, eyes unreadable. He didn't speak as he handed me my coat and led me to the private elevator that descended to the garage below Maddox Tower. A black car waited. Inside sat the man from the photo, Dominic Maddox. His resemblance to Cole was undeniable, but colder, crueler, like a reflection cracked at the edges. He didn't smile when I entered. "You're as beautiful as the headlines say," he said. "Shame you've made such dangerous choices." I leaned back in the seat, crossing my legs. "You broke into my building to compliment me?" "I came to offer you both a deal," he replied. "Walk away. Disappear. I'll let you keep what you've built." Cole laughed, short, sharp. "You think threats work on us?" "It's not a threat," Dominic said. "It's math. You're powerful, yes. But I know where the bones are buried. I helped dig some of them." I met his gaze. "You're not the only one who knows how to weaponize a secret." His smile twitched. "You think because you took down Damian West, you're untouchable?" Damian was an amateur with good cheekbones. "I run syndicates. Shadow capital. Politics. I'm not someone you outmaneuver. I'm someone you survive, if you're lucky." Cole stayed silent, but I could feel the tension in his body beside me. "You think I haven't prepared for this?" I said coolly. "Every empire has enemies, Dominic. But only the clever ones know how to make them disappear without a trace." "I'm not Damian," he growled. "I don't fall for pretty faces and clever boardroom speeches." "No," I said. "But you do underestimate women who've already died once." That ended the meeting. No bloodshed. No final threats. Just silence as we drove back into the heart of the city. When we reached the tower, Cole turned to me in the elevator. "If you want out," he said, "now's the time. If we go against him, it won't stop. It'll be global. Ugly. Expensive." I stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. "Then let it be. You're choosing war? I'm choosing you. Us. And everything we built from the ashes." He kissed me then, hard, certain, fierce. When we reached the penthouse, we didn't sleep. We mapped strategies. Names. Connections. People who owed us. People who feared us. And by sunrise, we were no longer just a CEO and an investor. We were something else entirely. A storm. A legacy. A love letter to every woman who had ever been buried beneath a man's ambition and clawed her way back wearing diamonds and steel. Dominic would come. He'd try to ruin us. And maybe he'd succeed in cracking walls or shaking headlines. But he would never destroy what we'd become. Because I wasn't the girl who once died in silence. I was the woman who wrote the ending this time. And it ended with me, standing at the top of an empire, with the man who helped me burn the world to build our own.